So thank you everybody for coming. As Paul just said, we're going to continue the conversation about money. In this case, it's, as you can see, the differences between research and philanthropic funding and why it's absolutely critical to know. A little bit of a nod to the Natural History Museum, although, sorry, this isn't your actual photograph, but it's absolutely critical to know the difference between the two, and we will explain why in a very, very quick fashion. What's interesting about museums is that you are better placed in some ways to have a lot of crossover between these two areas than almost any other department in the university. So, as a result, what Hattie and I have found is that our team has worked incredibly closely together, looking at the differences between philanthropic and research funding. And when I say our team, what I mean is myself, I'm Heidi Kurtz. I am the fundraiser for the Museum of History of Science in the Botanic Gardens. Jossie Austin in the front row there, who is fundraiser philanthropic again for Pitt Rivers and Natural History Museum, and Hattie, who somehow Hattie Warbarton manages to be the research facilitator for all of the museums except for the Botanic Gardens. So it's the
4 university museums.
Yeah. So it's a very crossover Venn diagram. So what we're going to do is we're going to explain kind of where the differences are and why, like I say, it's absolutely critical to know. Next slide. Really quick and dirty definition, but the thing to remember from this, like I said, these are general guidelines, they're not absolute concrete definitions, but the important thing to remember is that the kind of funding you're receiving depends on the funder, not on the project. So if you're doing research, but you're being funded by a philanthropic organization, means you are getting philanthropic funding, and it's critical to know this because the university has to declare all philanthropic income for tax. So it's not us who are just trying to be really draconian here. It's actually really important to know the difference. One of the main key things about research funding is that it only ever funds research. It doesn't fund anything else. So often it's, as you can see here, it can fund core costs. It can sometimes include overheads, depending on where it's coming from. It's generally, one of the interesting differences is that it's very institute driven. So the best project will win, usually. Despite relationships, I'll explain that in a second. Philanthropic funding, however, can fund research, but it can also fund a whole plethora of other things. It can fund capital projects, it can fund education projects, it can fund outreach, it can fund, you name it, it can fund whatever we need. But it doesn't typically include overheads. It typically does not fund core costs. And it's definitely more individually driven because usually it's a trustee or even an individual who's giving through a trust or foundation. I should specify here, I'm talking about trusts and foundations philanthropically, not necessarily major gifts or individuals. One important thing though is that for both, reporting is absolutely required. It has happened before, not this university, I'm happy to say, for I think in a case where it was in research funding, the university did not report correctly and had to give back millions, literally, of pounds to the funder because they refused to report. And they got into all kind of shades of hot water. So reporting is absolutely required, and that's one of the things that we can absolutely help you with. So I will now pass over to Hattie, who will tell you about different examples of funders.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's probably quite boring to run through the list in its entirety, so anyway, we've only got a few minutes. But these are just some examples of the sorts of funders that you can approach us three for help with. So from my side, research funders could be charity funders, like the Wellcome Trust or Leverhulme. Industry, often that is done in collaboration with a government funder. Government funders like research councils, also learned societies and academies. European funding and internal funding as well. This is a really good one for starting up, pump priming little projects that you might want to use. The decisions on these are all made by peer review, usually by experts in the field of the funder, although not necessarily experts in your field, so you need to be able to write in a generally accessible way. For philanthropic funding, which is not my area, but I'll whiz through for the purposes of not chopping and changing too much. Again, there are several types: individual giving mechanisms from family trusts or individuals, larger organisations, sort of set up charities and trusts like Wilson, Esme Fairbairn, organisations with an element of government funding, also public funding and corporate. And in these cases, decisions are made by boards of trustees who are very much not necessarily experts in that field. They can be, so again, you need to write well and in an accessible way and not assume too much knowledge on the part of your readers. The most important thing about all these funders is what we've written in red at the bottom, which is if you're not sure which category your trust falls into or your funder that you're interested in, or even if you're not sure which funder to approach for a particular project that you've got in mind, then just ask us. We're here to be asked about stuff. How do I click forwards? Like that. So in terms of the application process, I'm not going to talk you through it right now because it's not thrilling. The most important thing from my point of view, and I hope from your point of view as well, would be to involve me as early on as possible in your project idea so that I can help as much as possible with the whole, from the very beginning. And when I'm talking about research here, I don't just mean curators doing research. There are all sorts of other departments within our collections that could be doing research, so education, conservation, you name it. If you've got a good research idea, then come and talk to me, and I'm very happy to talk through it with you. So the sort of things I can help you with are insights into where the current funders are thinking and what their strategies are at the moment and their sort of strategic priorities, explanation of their rules, liaison with the funders, costing internally and sort of working out exactly how much money you're going to ask for, and then getting you through the systems both internally within Oxford and the funders' systems as well. That's probably all you need to know, isn't it? It's all up there. I'll hand over to Heidi for the next bit. There we go.
Thank you very much. With philanthropic funding, the application process is almost exactly the same. You need to involve us as soon as possible because we will have in mind who else might be going for this funder, what they might be approaching, what the funder from their point of view might be interested in seeing or not seeing. So the thing to do and to always keep in mind is the way to approach it is to always have your project as fully developed as possible, come to us, and then we will try to find a funder that fits it. If you try to do it the other way around, 9 times out of 10 it will not work, it will fail. For the simple reason that the funders don't like it when you try to build things that they think they'll like, if that makes sense. The relationship management that... excellent. Relationship management, thank you. The relationship management that we do is not really to interfere with your process, is to make it smoother. What we need to do, because this is greasing the wheels of the university, but as my husband would say, who's a mad cyclist, there's grease and then there's high-grade graphite lubricant. And what we're trying to do is get high-grade graphite lubricant for the museums. And we do that by managing all of these different pools and people so that nobody's getting in anyone else's way. The last thing I would simply say, and I can do this easily, under a minute, is who we are. These are our contact details. Come talk to us as soon as it's a twinkle in your eye, the idea that you've got, and we will help you shape it, we will help you deliver it, we will help you do all those sorts of things. I'm sure that you saw we don't project manage, but we can help you with almost every other process of the bid. Thank you.